Never stay in a hotel room numbered 13. Hello, I'm Mark, and I need to share what happened to me before it's too late. If you ever find yourself in a room like mine, leave immediately. It began on a rainy night when I decided to stay at a small, isolated hotel off the highway. Exhausted after hours of driving, I just wanted a warm bed and a few hours of sleep. The receptionist barely looked up as I approached the desk, her expression flat and her voice monotone when she handed me the key. Room 13, she muttered, her eyes fixed on the counter. I hesitated for a moment. Room 13? Not exactly a lucky number, but I was too tired to care. The hallway was dimly lit, with peeling wallpaper and floors that groaned underfoot. When I reached the door, I noticed the brass 13 on the plaque was tarnished, almost blackened, as if touched by countless hands over the years. Inside, the room was as unremarkable as the rest of the hotel. A creaky bed, faded curtains, and an old wooden dresser. But the mirror on the wall immediately caught my attention. It was large, old-fashioned, and slightly cloudy, as if no one had bothered to clean it properly for decades. My reflection in the dim light seemed off, almost blurred. I chalked it up to exhaustion and collapsed onto the bed. Sometime after midnight, I woke up feeling an intense cold. The room was freezing, far colder than it should have been. My eyes were drawn to the mirror, even though I didn't want to look. At first I thought it was just my reflection, but there was something else, a faint silhouette behind me. It didn't move, didn't waver, it just stood there. I stared at it, my breath shallow, unable to look away. Slowly the figure began to move, stepping closer to the surface of the glass. Its features became clearer. A gaunt face with hollow eyes, stretched skin, and a mouth that seemed frozen in a twisted grimace. I scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure was gone. The mirror reflected nothing but my pale, terrified face. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the corner of the room, keeping my back to the mirror. I refused to sleep, the cold and the oppressive silence pressing down on me like a weight. When the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, I grabbed my things and hurried downstairs to check out. At the front desk, I slid the key across the counter and told the receptionist I was leaving early. She glanced at the key and frowned. Room 13, she asked. Yes, I said, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. Her expression grew confused. We don't have a room 13, she said. You must mean room 14. We don't assign 13. It's bad luck. My blood ran cold. I had seen the tarnished plaque on the door, felt the key in my hand. I insisted, but she shook her head and waved me off dismissively. Determined to prove her wrong, I went back upstairs. The hallway felt different in the daylight, less oppressive. But when I reached the door where I had stayed, my heart nearly stopped. The plaque now read 14, the brass shiny and polished, as if it had been cleaned recently. The tarnished 13 was nowhere in sight. I opened the door, but the room inside was different. The bed was neatly made. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals, and my belongings were gone. The mirror was missing too, replaced by a blank stretch of wall. It was as if no one had been there at all. I ran back to the front desk, my voice shaking as I demanded answers. The receptionist stared at me like I was insane. Please leave, she said firmly, her eyes flickering towards something, or someone behind me. I turned, but the lobby was empty. Before I could leave, an elderly man stepped forward, his face pale and his hands trembling. You stayed in 13, didn't you? He whispered. His voice was barely audible, his eyes darting around nervously. I nodded, unsure of what to say. They've tried to seal it off, to hide it, he said, leaning closer. But it always comes back. It doesn't want to be forgotten. And if you've seen it, you're marked now. My throat went dry, and I stammered, What do you mean? He glanced over his shoulder, lowering his voice further. Did you look in the mirror? He asked. I couldn't bring myself to answer. His face crumpled in despair. Then it's too late. It'll follow you now. I didn't stay to hear more. I left the hotel and drove as far as I could. But no matter where I go, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I pass a mirror, I catch glimpses of movement. Just a shadow at the edge of my vision. Sometimes when the room is quiet, I hear soft, shuffling footsteps behind me. If you ever find yourself in a hotel room numbered 13, leave immediately. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirror. Because if you do, you might not be the only one looking back.